I just concluded a wonderful production week and it was so exciting. And today I'm going to give you some secrets that I use to make my production week less stressful. So I was filming a commercial, actually a series of commercials, and a lot of B-roll and a lot of stuff for this commercial. Script, storyboard, a whole 9 yards on an FX3 with some of the most brilliant lighting that I could come up with for shooting interviews, shooting B-roll, and just having a blast shooting all these action shots and all this kind of stuff. And it was 3 days of non-stop shooting. And I shot everything on a prime 35mm. Yes. Everything, even the, I think the B camera we used for the interview was a different lens, just because the way it worked out, and sometimes the cinematographer and I butt heads, but I conceded and let him choose, and we shot everything on Sony Gamma 3, the cine profile of Sony Gamma, so it's log, I can do HDR, it's all 4K, it looks gorgeous, and DaVinci's currently rendering someone else's footage, and that's right next to me going in and just developing this HDR footage, which looks phenomenal, lots of colors in the background, and it just looks high class. But you can't execute something high class without a good level of production preparedness, and we call that pre-production. And today we're not going to talk about pre-production, we've done that a little bit before, but rather we're going to talk about how pre-production helps production and some secrets that I can give you to help you with your production. Before we get started, I need to let you know a little bit about my background. I know I say but first a lot. It's like my instant buzzword. But first, but wait, there's more. I know in my podcasts, and I'm working on becoming a better podcast organic speaker. Let all my passion be infused into these podcasts so you can have a great experience. Because when I first started in production way back in the day, let me tell you, I've been in productions that have been extremely stressful. I've been in charge of productions that have been extremely stressful, and I've learned a lot from my mistakes. And you can ask almost anyone I've been around with, they know how stressful these things can get, especially live broadcasts. So I did a lot of live events, sometimes do some commercials, some spots, things of that nature, and I'd record a whole bunch of media, and we'd kind of have an idea, we'd kind of have a script, and we'd go out, and it just wasn't as prepared as it could be. And when you're doing live and you have the clock against you, you may have a spec sheet that says this is happening, this is happening, this is happening, this is happening. If you don't do a fact check, that's checking your technology, it's checking audio, it's checking video, you could have something that just doesn't function as you intend it to, which is why rehearsals are such an important part of any production, rehearsals and test shots. And we're going to talk a little bit about that today, and a little bit about how I overcome that, because I don't want you to walk into a production, don't want you to walk into a client who's paying you thousands of dollars to do a commercial or whatever it is, and then they walk out stressed, feeling like it's not successful, feeling like it hurts, feeling like you don't want the client to walk away thinking you don't know how to do your job. You want them to walk away thinking, I started the day stressful, or I didn't start the day stressful, and I know you've got it. Because if a client walks away stressed, you're not doing, if you're a Christian, you're not doing what God's told you to be and be carrying his peace and his spirit about you. God is not the author of confusion. God's not the author of chaos. So wherever you go, even if you're in the midst of chaos, you should be the eye of the storm in perfect peace. That being said, as a human factor, that's a lot difficult to do. And I understand that a lot of people who are in entrepreneurship and are in business get stressed a lot, especially when there's a lot of money on the line. But you have to remember to be confident in who you are, and confidence helps when you do pre-production. So I spent weeks doing pre-production. I did client research. I did, in-depth watching people do their everyday, take notes, and just curate, do some, ChatGPT. I had it scroll through some articles, and I had research come down, and I've interviewed a couple members of my team, and, we sat down together and we talked about the different components, and we built a script and a preliminary storyboard, went to a meeting. We had our first meeting, client signs, and then we had our first pre-production meeting, and we went through and we got some notes, and the script was good, but it could be elevated. And so we went through round 2 and we did that, and we polished the script, and we were able to polish the storyboard. I used ChatGPT to help a little bit with storyboard image generation. So I'd give it some of the principal photography that I've done and some of the other kind of warm-up photography. I wouldn't call it principal photography because didn't have a talent on set, and we weren't doing that kind of thing, but it was more location scouting and location photography. And I was able to plug that into ChatGPT, and ChatGPT was able to generate some really cool storyboard frames. This is the kind of what we're looking for color-wise. This is kind of the scene and the set and the mood, and it kind of helped to let the client know a little bit more about the process, and so that they weren't feeling very, how do I say, stressed by the creative conversation, because when I get creative, I also get technical, because for some reason I'm both creative and technical. I'm an engineer and also a designer, and it's weird. It's an interesting personality that God has given me. Now, that also comes with its own benefits, and it's cool, but a lot of people on the other end of a table are going to be like, I don't know what that is, I don't know what that technology is, I don't care, I just want to feel that it's executed. And so coming with visuals, having a storyboard with the script, because the script has interiors, exteriors, and all those shot notes and things, and that they just don't care about it, they don't know what it is. In fact, you get questions about it all the time. Well, what's this? Well, this is this. And it's better to couple that with the storyboard. In fact, I had a client, we walked in, this is the same client, we walked in, and then he had a chance to look at the storyboard, and so they had questions on the script, and I was like, well, you just pair that to the storyboard. And they opened the storyboard because they had just printed it, and I was like, oh, I hate that it's black and white, because that's what they had at the time. I was like, well, you can pull it up on my iPad, here you go. And they were able to look at it, we were able to connect, make a little bit more changes to the script, and I kind of got a verbal approval, and we went into kind of preliminary, so pre-production components, the script, the storyboard, the location scouting, the talent that would be on there. Got some headshots of some of the people that they were going to use for interviews, and I was able to do pre-interviews. I did a whole lot of pre-interviews because we're recording testimonials as part of the commercial package, and so you pull information, call people up, spend about an hour or two so that you can hone down, and when you sit down in the chair, you'll be like, okay, 10, 15 minutes, 20 minutes at the max. In fact, everyone, I believe, ended up around 12 minutes or less on the interview chair because of the preliminary interviews. And even though I think one person I didn't get a chance to preliminary interview because we were playing phone tag, and they sat down because I had the other interviews and they were kind of the same type of person, same kind of job, same kind of thing. And so I was able to ask the right questions and kind of hone in a little bit, and it worked fairly well. I ask that you add that if you're going to do any testimonials, any kind of, whether it's customer or whatever it is, that you pre-interview someone, a better understanding of exactly what you need, those kinds of components. And that way you sit down in the chair and you're able to know, okay, this is how I tell the story, these are the questions I ask, these are responses I expect, and you're kind of able to ask leading questions to kind of enhance the story. So someone was like, yeah, I'm making this job my career, and I've done this, X, Y, Z. I didn't get a chance to say that they were making a career, so I went ahead and I asked them, point blank, hey, last time we talked, you said they were making this career. Can you tell me a little bit about it? And I kind of would already preliminary tell them, okay, kind of incorporate that question as part of your answer so that it looks like it's more of you're responding or having a normal organic conversation than an interviewer sitting behind you or in front of the camera. In fact, quick cheat code, if you're interviewing someone, here's the camera, be right next to the camera so they can make eye contact with you, and it looks almost like they're making eye contact with the lens. And that's why I get that little bit off camera look when someone's being interviewed by a documentary, because it makes it more organic. Because looking in front of a camera lens is not always easy to do, A, and B, you get distracted if you're seeing a live monitor view. And that's another thing. I don't usually put live monitor views on set unless you need the confidence boost and you're someone with a lot of experience, because most people aren't going to know what that is. And frankly, it is even distracting me to look over here at my preview monitor as opposed to look here at my camera lens, which is more important because you get that eye contact. But anyway, so we did the preliminary interviews, and I got in touch with the cinematographer. Cinematographer arrived on Monday, and Monday night we collected equipment. We went through to make sure we had everything we needed. I had to go to Midwest and purchase some new things. I'm here in Ohio. Purchase some new things and buy some stuff, some small light cubes to add some more light to things because we ran out of some lighting. And, just a few odds and ends. And then, of course, the lens that we were renting at the time for the B camera, which may or may not have worked very well. So we used the A camera lens and a different lens. But in any event, we did that. And then on Tuesday, I met with the cinematographer and we did a walk through all the locations. And we did this because it was one kind of building and one kind of place. And it was easier for me to show him, here's the storyboard, and walk him through positioning and walk him through, and so he can get comfortable with questions. So that way, Wednesday morning at 7 a.m. when call time was, and here's a quick call time secret, always set your call time a half hour before you expect people to arrive to start their preparation. Because usually it takes about an hour or two to set up lights and make sure everything is good and test audio and all those kinds of things before you actually start your shoot. And so there's a start time there, then I give a half hour to allow for traffic and other things. And I say the start time is 7. And if you arrive at 7:15, I'm okay. If you arrive at 7:30, we got a problem. But and I also encourage everyone to text me and stuff. And so, I arrive at 7:02, it's late. It's my studio set, I should not be late. And then, cinematographer arrives at 7:10, and the person who was on time and early, because if you're early, you're on time, the LD, he arrived at 6:45. And I was super surprised. It's the first time I worked with this particular LD, and he was referred by the cinematographer, and they worked very well hand in hand. He was able to, on Wednesday, we were able to set up, open up C-stands, add lights, those kinds of things, go through the equipment, do all our checklists, and then start running and gunning through the whole day. And usually I spec about an hour, 45 minutes to an hour to do specially specified shots and B-roll when you're running and gunning and you position people and that kind of thing. But because we had all this preparation, we were literally able to knock this out in about 15 to 20 minutes each. So we were able to add a whole bunch of additional creative ideas. I kind of made sure that we had the storyboard and we checked all the storyboard, and then we also got extra and additional footage. I always recommend, if you have the time and you've checked the box of your storyboard, great commercials are made by the spontaneous creativity that happens. We had a haze machine, we started adding haze, we started adding the colors, and we started adding it. We were like, it would be cool if we could, get tighter and extreme close up here and show this action here, and the kind of things that were above and beyond what was spec'd on the storyboard. And you can only do that if you've done all this pre-planning, the cinematographer knows what he's doing, the LD knows what they're doing, and everyone just connects on set. The very, very most important thing is no one on my set, we were very lean operation, but no one on, I say my set, air quotes, no one on the set was sitting around on the phone, whatever. We were always multitasking. And even then, we were still able to get some behind the scenes photos and things that was really, really cool and exciting to see us being able to go above and beyond for this particular client. And what should have been 2 B-roll shoot days was mostly all, 2 or 3, was mostly all shot on the first day. Now we had personnel issues, and so we had to wait till the next day to do a few additional shots. And then we had interviews spec'd for that Friday, and we were just literally on Wednesday running, we were good, checking, and then I pull the SD card at the end of the day, check all the footage, make sure we're good. We had one footage, I was like, I don't know if that will work, and I was messing with the color grading. I was like, okay, good, I can make this work. So we were able to knock out all that B-roll, able to knock out all that on Wednesday, do some on Thursday, and then on Friday, it was literally just interviews. We were just sitting around executing the interviews, and I was able to start color grading, able to start preparing for the editing process later, and it was just stress-free. Everyone enjoyed the production. In fact, I was told by a cinematographer, and he's not my cinematographer, I contract him, and he does a whole bunch of projects all over the place. He works with government all over the place, and he told me that this is the most prepared production he's ever been in. And I'm like, dude, I'm like one guy, and I have writers, and I have people I contract with, and I bounce ideas off of in a creative community. But for the most part, this guy is it. And so for someone to say this is the most prepared production, I felt bad for everyone. Because if you're walking in a production, you're walking on a set, and you're stressed, that's going to convey to your talent. Your talent's going to see it in your face, and there's no way of hiding it. No amount of covering your face or pretending to smile is going to hide that you're stressed. And that's going to convey to your talent, and your talent's going to feel stressed. And that's going to convey to your people you're working with, and they're going to be stressed. People on set stressed. If they're all on set, that's when mistakes happen. Especially if you're working with hot sets. Say you have pyrotechnics or things of that nature, and that's how people get hurt. That's how people get unsafe. And we had some adventure shots and some action shots going on there, and we had some potential unsafe things. And to prevent that, you just have all this preparation, and you let everyone know in advance, okay, we're not doing X, we're going to make sure that you show clear before you walk on set, and those kinds of things. People who know what that is know what I mean. So we were able to shoot these sets with both this creative capacity to be stress-free, and to know exactly what we're doing, and added stuff. The haze added all that diffusion, added those beams of lights, and it added that next level cinematic look. And we were able to add that in because I did test shots. The biggest thing I say in pre-production is do test shots. I, decided, usually I use Adobe Premiere for everything. And occasionally if I have to do some additional color grading, I'll either get someone or I'll try to figure it out myself and try to use Adobe to the extreme. And I decided to jump into DaVinci. And with all of my years of experience coming from Avid Media Composer and Premiere, I was just able, and Final Cut, I was able to just learn DaVinci, just a few Instagram videos, a few YouTube videos, and I was able to pick it up like that. And then it just expounded this whole world of color correction, or color grading rather, which is what makes a cinematic, a commercial, a piece unique, is because of all the adaptive colors and the HDR step. And now people use Rec 709 as their standard, but I've gone away with Rec 709 completely on most of my commercials because most prosumer technology now supports HDR, and of course YouTube will do the conversion for you. And it's not a bad conversion. It used to be way back in the day, but it's now much better. And Instagram now does HDR, and so the whole world right now is 4K HDR, and soon it'll be 8K HDR, and soon, if Apple can get it, it'll be VR. And if you're not, stepping up, and sometimes when you learn a process or someone teaches you a process, you learn that there are things that they add to that process that don't need to be there. And you only know that if you know the process. You can't break the rule without knowing why the rule exists. And so I'm able to jump in and I was able to learn how to do this color correction, that kind of stuff, and I was able to jump in and just do some test shots, see what would work, see what's cool, and we were able to do a lot of things. We tried some test shots, on Wednesday after we filmed the B-roll, we stayed for an additional hour and a half to set up the interview set, to strike stuff. We couldn't keep things, lights and stands and everything where they were, so we had to literally strike it with gaff tape. And because this is where it's going. We took photos of the scene and the sets and scenery, and we tested it. We did a bunch of test shots, and it's able to be like, okay, this is going to work great. If we change the lighting here, and the cinematographer's like, no, always point lighting directly on your subject. I'm like, no. I want that film work. I don't mind a little bit of harsh shadows because I'm going for that kind of gritty story, but I also want that cinematic look. And so you may notice I have a little bit more shadows in this particular podcast, and during the grade, it'll look a little bit different. But I couldn't do any of those creative things. If you try a creative thing you don't test before the commercial day, don't do it. What you can do with AI is just so much better, but it's a tool. It's never a replacement for creativity. So I don't use it to replace your ability to think on your feet, your ability to like when I use AI for suggestions on script, I give it all the information, I give it the research, and I pull the script and I make changes to the script, and we go rounds, team goes through it back and forth. It's a tool that helps kind of push things forward so they get a little bit faster and less stressful. If I didn't have the knowledge that this device, this DJI device, works better than my podcast mic, I'll use my podcast mic, and it's extremely stressful to set up the podcast mic to prevent noise, because there's no noise cancellation embedded, and I always have to have stuff post-processed, and it never sounds quite right, and it doesn't convey. But when I did this test, I'm like, okay, we've tested the footage, we know it works, this is awesome. In fact, this is my test, the DJI 3 now, and because of the podcast, I'm able to do that, hopefully successfully. But I know that this podcast has kind of broken up a little bit, and I know I don't have a lot of time because it might overheat again, even though I had to kick on the air conditioner and all those kinds of things. Let me tell you this. Whatever you do, whatever it is, preparation and testing is never wasted time. Test shots, pre-interview people, do location scouting, do all the traditional things that you think, a movie company hires people to do. No. If a client is paying you, you have to understand that they're going to expect you to know your craft, whether it's printing t-shirts or whether it's, creating a musical track or providing an accompaniment for something or whatever it is. They're going to expect you to know, or at least be able to hire people and include that in your invoice and those kinds of things. Most clients don't care if it takes XYZ to get the job done. Of course, some people have budgets and things. You don't want to give them an unlimited, multi-million-dollar cost for something that's not multi-millions of dollars. But if something takes extra time and resources, you as a business don't have to front that. You just have to know, okay, we need this done. Okay, I have to go get a cinematographer and make sure that I'm producing, and you have a cinematographer producing, directing, and he's a cinematographer who also can direct and can also step in and we work well together. I mean, I pull him for everything we can do. It's awesome. I love it when he's here in Columbus, and because he's usually in Washington, D.C., then, try to find someone who can step in as key grip and step in as lighting director, kind of a combination of the two, even though technically in this particular instance he was more key grip than lighting director, but was award-winning and was kind of like a good sounding board for us. And it's the first time I worked with him, and because I met with him, a week before, pre-interviewed him and got through paperwork and all that kind of stuff. I was able to know who he was. And in fact, Wednesday morning, I shouldn't have been surprised when he texted me, hey, at 6:45, I'm here on set. Where are you? And I'm like, I'm 15 minutes away, 17 minutes away. And it was 2 minutes later. So, and I'm driving down there, not speeding, I swear. I solemnly swear I was not speeding. But I arrived on set and was able to be like, oh, okay. You're here early. I should have expected this because I know I've tested this. We've had a conversation. I know who you are. I know who I'm working with. I know and I trust cinematographer. And you can't have confidence if you're walking in stressful. You can't convey confidence to clients if you're walking in unprepared and not able to execute what you need to do. Now, I will say this. When I was doing a lot of live stuff, no amount of preparation can prepare you for someone knocking over the set, for someone literally dying on live TV, going to their eternal reward, and you take a shot and you think that they're praying or whatever it is, this was for a nonprofit, and they passed on. You're like, oh, there goes my career. No, it's things happen. And the amount of preparation you do, I always tell people this. When I spec days and I spec shots, I tell them, hey, I'm going to spec 3 days. Traditionally, someone can say, I can knock this down in a day. I'm going to tell you, I'm not going to do that. And here's why. We usually have scheduling conflict, and I want to prepare for the worst. I inform them before, because each day you pay for, and so I inform you, hey, I'm doing X, Y, and Z because this is what prevents stress. This is what prevents things. And as long as you're open up front with it, then they're okay with me charging it. And we used all those 3 days very, very well, I thought, and it was a very exciting experience. We were able to execute those interviews, execute things, and now I'm going here, DaVinci Resolve, color grading, using Relight, using the new depth finder. It's awesome, just adding a hint because I just wanted a hair light, and because of this scenario, we couldn't add a hair light specifically where I wanted it, so I can add it in post. And tested it first, please. Anytime someone says fix it in post, if you can't test it, if you haven't tested it, that you can fix it in post, it's not an option. Not an option. Just do it right the first time. But of course, if you're running a little light and you tested it and it's good, okay, then I can understand. The greatest productions that you see that do multi-million-dollar sets, that, the big James Cameron Avatar features, well, they do tests and tests and tests and hours and days and weeks and months in this pre-production process to experiment and find out, okay, what's going to execute flawlessly. So on the day, it feels less creative and more executing off a checklist, so that you are more free to be creative and step into more creative and cool environment and be able to, you're going to say it that way. Okay, we're going to change the camera angles and we're going to move things around because it feels better because you're prepared. So I pray right now that you learn to live in peace through preparedness, and you learn to not only walk and exude the peace that God gave you, because He's the Alpha and the Omega. He created everything. He knows the beginning from the end and the end from the beginning. And I can tell you, He is fully prepared for every eventual scenario. You have free will. He knows exactly what choice you're going to make, even if you don't. And He's prepared for it. That's why grace and mercy exists, because He knows that we are flawed human beings. And sometimes we have harsher shadows and lights we should. And we make mistakes. He knows that. Some of us make mistakes the day before yesterday or whatever. We all make mistakes. But God the Father prepared, and He gave us peace. And that peace that passes all understanding. And if we tune into the Holy Spirit, and I pray you tune into the Holy Spirit, I pray that you tune in and you listen to your client. You let wisdom and understanding be your guide, and that stress lifts off you. In Jesus' mighty name I pray. Amen. Be blessed. This is the Create Podcast. It's a pleasure to have you here. Don't forget to like, share, comment, send this to someone that you know that's being a creative. Please understand, I have lots of years of experience and I have a lot of things to dive into. And who knows, maybe something that you have a problem with, I have a solution for. See you right here next time on the Create Podcast. Don't forget to like, share, comment, all those wonderful things, and let me know that you're enjoying this content. You be blessed, and you be at peace.